Thank you, Heidi, and the Phillipsburg Chamber for taking the time to review this presentation. My name is Angie Winter, and I have been a resident of the Flathead Valley since May of 2017. My story is like many others. We came to Glacier National Park in the Valley on family vacations, fell in love with it, and then chose to retire here. I had a 30-year career in human resources with United Technologies, making many parts for commercial and military aircraft. Upon retirement, I quickly looked for ways to give back to the community, which has included volunteering at many organizations. Right now, my focus is on preserving our climate for generations to come. And a year ago, I became co-leader for the Flathead Valley chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. CCL is a national nonprofit exclusively focused on a legislative solution to climate change, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And now I'd like you to meet my friend, Mary.
Hi, my name is Mary Mulcair Jones. I have spent quite a bit of time in Phillipsburg. We lived in Butte for about 24 years and raised our children there, and did a lot of skiing at Discovery, and have been to Phillipsburg, to the candy store, and just love that whole area. We moved, my husband and I moved to Missoula about 5 years ago to be closer to our 6 grandchildren. And I started volunteering with Citizens Climate Lobby for my grandchildren to try to work for a livable future, a livable world for them. I have worked with them for the past 4 years, and I am the co-leader for the Missoula CCL chapter.
Thanks, Mary. So looking at the next page, Mary and I have studied your chamber webpage, and we're aware of your key priorities as listed on the right-hand side. As someone who's really passionate about the outdoors, I know how important it is to preserve your quote unquote outdoor paradise, as you mentioned on your website. Personally, I believe CCL and the legislation that we are proposing can help you with these priorities. How, you might be asking? Well, Mary's going to outline those those opportunities on the next page.
First, job creation. We know that as soon as we mention renewables, some people are concerned about the potential loss of jobs in the fossil fuel industries. I think it's important to remember that the industries of the United States and Montana are always evolving. I am sure back in the day, the blacksmiths were not too excited to see cars come along. On a net basis, job opportunities increase. In the critical electric power sector, job opportunities increase 3 to 1 because renewable energy jobs are more labor intensive. Jobs will be created through rapid investment in clean energy, and jobs will be created in construction and retrofits of buildings for energy efficiency and low carbon footprints. The new clean energy jobs, compensation and benefits are better than the national average, on par with fossil fuel jobs. It's estimated that we need to transform 10% of our global economy and many of the machines that power it. You can see that as a threat or an opportunity. The transformation is already creating new jobs, and proactive communities will be on the front end of the transition. Some call solving climate change the greatest wealth creation opportunity in the history of humankind. Wyoming, Utah, and Idaho are making strides with wind farms and modern nuclear power with battery storage. Why not Montana and Phillipsburg?
So before we leave that slide, I would also mention that every business owner is conscious of costs, And the legislation that we're going to talk about in a moment provides predictable energy costs. Also, anyone in Montana that has lost power after a windstorm knows the importance of reliable energy. The legislation that we're going to discuss in a moment will drive innovation and ensure that renewable forms of energy are also reliable. Also, we've touched a couple of times already on the natural beauty of the Phillipsburg area. Acting now to reduce emissions will ensure that we retain the natural beauty that draws tourists and new residents. It'll also help protect businesses that are most impacted by climate change: tourism, outfitters, agriculture, ranching, and logging. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about climate change. I'm sure all of you were affected in some way this summer in terms of air quality and recreation opportunity. Speaking for my husband and I, we had a backcountry camping reservation for Glacier, the Kintla hole-in-the-wall Quartz Lake area, and it was canceled due to the fire near Pole Bridge. Mary, you want to talk about page 5?
Yes. So if we look at the impacts on our waterways, we see many different impacts. I'm sure we have some fishermen in the crowd, in the as members of the chamber. Phillipsburg is a big fishing destination. So we're concerned about the prospects for fishing and other water related sports as we experience lower stream flows and the reduced value of cold water fishing. Diseased fish, all these are evolving as the temperatures warm.
And certainly last but not least, winter sports. Mary already touched on Discovery Ski Area, and I'm sure thinking about the ski area and its legacy and how many of your families learned to ski there evokes the same feelings that many of us feel about snow recreation. Personally, I'm a mountain ambassador at Whitefish Mountain, and I know what it means to the locals. Generations have learned to ski there, and it would be a shame to see the ski season get shorter and shorter, not to mention the impact that that would have on the broader Phillipsburg economy. But we're not here to be harbingers of doom. Rather, we want to talk about solutions. So Mary's going to talk about what makes a good climate solution.
Thanks, Angie. In a moment, I'll explain to you the particular approach that CCL is promoting, and you can see for yourself if it's something you would support. First, let's just ask that question. What makes a good solution? Well, a good solution would drive large-scale change quickly. The solution has to be big enough to match the scale of the problem. We need to transform our trend line from adding carbon to reducing carbon in the atmosphere. Second, it would be fair versus regressive. It shouldn't pose a burden on those who are poor or disadvantaged. It needs to be healthy for the planet and the economy. It should not only reduce carbon emissions for a healthy climate, but also help create jobs and a robust economy for all. It needs to be durable. It needs to be able to stick around, which means it needs popular support, bipartisan support, so that a change in political leadership can't easily overturn the effective policy. And we would want to see incentives versus control, where people can choose for themselves with incentives, prompting them to choose wisely, especially because some people really don't want the government to tell them what they can and can't do. So what approach meets those criteria?
So it's called carbon fee and cashback, and this is how it works. So if you look on the left-hand side of the chart here, we start with the carbon fee. This policy puts a fee on the emissions of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. And before you start thinking this is a fee on you as an individual, we estimate that only about 2,000 entities in the US would pay the fee. It starts low and it grows over time. This will drive down carbon pollution because, first, consumers over time will make choices to move toward lower carbon energy ways to live. Suddenly, carpooling, electric cars, and solar panels are more than just a good idea. They save me money. Secondly, energy companies and leading industries will be increasingly motivated to invest in technologies that provide energy with less greenhouse gas, whether it's an attic insulation business, software to increase the range of an electric car, or long-term alternate energy development. There are virtually thousands of ways that a carbon fee would accelerate and unlock a clean energy economy. So instead of government using regulations to restrict companies, industry will naturally want to compete by inventing and investing in lower cost, lower carbon technologies. So now if we move to the center of the slide, let's talk about the carbon cashback. We give back to households because, as Mary mentioned, it makes the policy durable and popular. You as an individual would get a check every month to spend however you want. The genius of this approach is that the less carbon you use, the more of that money you get to spend on your other needs. The money collected from the carbon fee from those 2,000 entities I mentioned is directly recycled back into the hands of consumers, distributed in equal shares every month to the American people to spend as they see fit. The government does not keep any of the money from the carbon fee. Therefore, we are not growing government with this legislation. Studies show that low and middle income households will come out ahead with this policy. Those who use less carbon will be rewarded, so the incentives are in place to do the right thing for the planet. The final piece of this chart is called the carbon border adjustment. To protect US manufacturers and jobs, imported goods will pay a border carbon adjustment, and the goods exported from the US that have paid a carbon fee will receive a refund under this policy. Quite frankly, it's a simple and it's an elegant idea, and it won't happen unless we build the political will in Congress to make it law. The Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act was introduced as House Resolution 2307 in April of 2021. So now Mary's going to talk a little bit more about the specific benefits of the act.
Net zero by 2050. This policy will reduce America's carbon pollution by 50% by 2030, putting us on track to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Affordable clean energy. With this policy, the government makes fossil fuels more expensive, and businesses compete to provide clean energy solutions. The resulting innovation will reduce our pollution fast and efficiently, leading to plenty of reliable and affordable clean energy for our modern life. This policy saves lives, as it will improve health and save approximately 4.5 million American lives over the next 50 years by reducing the air pollution Americans breathe. Poor air quality is responsible for as many as 1 in 10 American deaths today, and it sickens thousands more. Putting money in your pocket. The policy is affordable for ordinary Americans because it puts money in your pocket. The money collected from the fee is given as a monthly dividend or carbon cashback payment to every American over 18 years old to spend with no restrictions. 95% of low and middle income Americans will come out financially ahead or break even. Also, the extra spending money in our pockets from a carbon cashback will provide more dollars to spend with our local businesses. Local economies benefit from carbon dividends.
It's an interesting statistic that today we spend 800 billion in costs related to fossil fuels. For example, one slice of that pie would be the money that we spend to fight fires. Wouldn't we rather invest that $800 billion in new technologies and create jobs from it? A few very simple examples. So local timber industries stand to benefit from increased demand as mass timber displaces conventional steel and concrete materials in construction. The local construction industry stands to profit from more home and business energy efficiency upgrades and electric vehicle charging stations. Another example, the increased competitiveness of wind energy combined with Montana's huge untapped wind power potential creates a great job opportunity. Conversion to 100% non-carbon energy will cost about 1% of GDP. Did you know that that's about what it cost to retrofit all of the world's cities with indoor plumbing a century ago? I think you'd agree with me, it was totally worth it. Past generations have built the electrical grid, the interstate highway system, landed on the moon. I believe we can meet the challenge of saving our planet and replacing the world's energy system.
Don't just take our word for it. The United States Chamber of Commerce came out with its updated position in early 2021. We agree with all three of their statements. They support a market-based approach enacted by Congress.
So as we've already mentioned a couple of times in this presentation, one market-based approach is carbon fee and cashback. There is broad economic support for this approach. As you can see on this slide, 3,589 economists, businesses, business associations, regulatory bodies, and a growing number of Montana entities. The City of Whitefish, Bridger Bowl, Montana Trout Unlimited, and several ranchers and farmers are among the expanding list of organizations that have publicly endorsed the act. 92 House members back this effective carbon pricing legislation. So why should you, the Phillipsburg Chamber, do anything? First of all, to support the lead of the US Chamber. Clearly, they have studied the climate change issue, the various legislative options that are out there for solving climate change, and have arrived at this conclusion. You can do the research on your own, or you can take their lead. Another reason to take action is to have a voice. By definition, fossil fuels are not renewable. They're going away. So eventually we are going to have to solve for this problem. So you can wait for it to happen to you, or you can have a voice. And last and certainly but not least, as we mentioned at the very beginning, I believe this legislation supports the priorities that the chamber has. So we have a number of options that you can consider. You can outright endorse the act, and Mary and I would be happy to show you how to do that. You could write a letter to Todd O'Hare, the head of the Montana Chamber of Commerce, in support of the act and the position of the US Chamber. We'd certainly be happy to come back and talk to you some more about the act. If you're not prepared to move all the way to supporting the act, you could certainly communicate that you're willing to support carbon pricing with our members of Congress. You could write a letter to Todd in support of carbon pricing specifically, and the position of the U.S. Chamber. And we have example documents that you could use. You would not have to create them on your own. So thanks again for this opportunity to tell you about Citizens Climate Lobby and the Act. Mary will follow up with you probably in a week or so to see if there are questions from the chamber and to talk about next steps. Thanks again.
Thank you.